of the person that you love the most in this life. Be aware of the feeling towards them in your heart. Try to get in touch with it very clearly. See if you can make it stronger and grow it so that it becomes a bigger part of you, begins to fill you. Now, think of the holy being that you're closest to and feel their love inside you also becoming stronger, even more intense than the feeling before. Feel your connection to them in your heart very strong. Just hold it and sit with it. Feel it. This is our goal with LOJONG practice, to feel this, to offer it to others. So, see if you can hold on to that and maintain that as we go through the class and through the evening and through the day tomorrow. If it fades, try to come back to it. It's a good practice just to fill oneself with love as intently as possible. To check in frequently with oneself and see what one is feeling and see if that's present. If not, to take a moment and cultivate it. You can see this feeling of intense love take the form of a holy being at your heart, glowing in light, manifest in form. And you can even ask this holy being to help you hold this feeling and increase this feeling and bless you to have this feeling as much as possible. If you find it difficult to just check in, pray for a blessing, make supplication. So thank you for coming, holy beings. Nice to see you. I wish all holy beings everywhere. There's one at the door. Two. So, does anyone need a quiz? Nah. I'm sure you're printing them off from the website and turning them in regularly, right? Okay, great. So we're on to another LOJONG this evening. This is the last LOJONG we'll do in this class. We've done quite a few. This is a pretty cool one. Please say Tsunchen.
Tsunchen.
Korlo.
Korlo.
Suncha Korlo.
Suncha Korlo.
So this is, Koilo means a circle or wheel, and Suncha means a knot, it's a wheel of knot. So it's sometimes, a Suncha can mean a weapon of any kind, actually, not just knives. It can be a bomb or a gun or a missile or stick, any weapon will do, right? So it's sometimes translated as the wheel of sharp weapons, but it's really, more accurately, just the wheel of knives. So, and the idea of this, and this is in the Vinaya Sutra, and the idea of this is to teach about karma and its consequences. This particular text is a focus. Its focus is karma causation. So. Before we kind of delve into all of the nitty-gritty of karma and its consequences, this is an interesting class because it goes into specific karmas and their results. And it also has a Kori story, so it's cool enough to us. So those of us, never mind. So the story is this. It kind of gives you a feeling of what the Wheel of Knives is about. And the story is that it's around 500 BC. And it's told by a Buddha or some other holy being as one of their past lives. They're relating it to their disciples and say, this happened to be in a past life, so I'm going to let you know that this is how it works, so that you can be aware and pay attention to your actions. So it's a story about a seafaring family that lives on a hillside. And the father's a sailor. He goes off to sea and he's away a lot. Eventually he drowns and doesn't come back. The mother has a son, teenager, of age to go to sea, and the next season, whenever it's time for the boats to go out, the son asks if he can go sailing, and the mother says, no, I don't want you to go. I'm afraid you're going to die. I don't want you to go out, with the kids. I want you to stay here. He's not happy about it, but his friends head off to sea, and he stays home with his mom, and that's that. So, so then again, so he respected her wishes, but then the next season comes around, the boats are going out, his friends are going, more of his friends are going out to sea, and he asks his mother again, can I go out to sea? I'm a sailor, I want to go out to sea. And again, she's nervous that something's going to happen to him, he'll die at sea, he's her only son. And, she says, no, I want you to stay, you have to stay. So he gets angry. He gets very angry. He says, okay, I'll stay. I'll listen. I'll stay. And so then once again, the next season, same thing. The last of his friends are heading out to sea, and he tells his mother that he wants to go. And she says, no, I forbid you to go. And he gets really angry and tries to leave and go out to join the ships, and she blocks the door. And he accidentally bangs her on the head as he's forcing his way out the door. So, and then he goes off to sea. And then he's out sailing, his boat is shipwrecked. Everyone drowns except him. He finds himself on a deserted island. He finds himself marooned on a deserted island. And so he wakes up and there's nothing there. There's no one around, it's just a dark forest. So he doesn't really have any choice except to go into the dark forest. So he starts wandering in the dark forest, and he's lost, impossibly lost, and no food, no water. And he's about to expire, and he passes out. And he's unconscious, and then he wakes up and he sees 4 beautiful ladies there. He looks up and he sees 4 beautiful ladies there, dressed in silks, gorgeous, exquisite. And they say, we're so glad you're here. And please come with us to our castle, and we'd love you to come with us to our castle and live with us in our castle. And he does, and they lead him to the castle, and he lives there in bliss for many, many years. And so one day he is out walking in the forest, and he gets lost again. And so again he's lost in this dark forest, wandering around again, out of food, out of water, ready to expire, passes out. And he wakes up and he sees, this time he sees 6 beautiful ladies. Same thing. They say, I'm so glad we found you, and you come with us to our castle, and we'll take you home, and we'll care for you. And so he goes to that castle and lives not a life of bliss for many years, but a life of luxury for many years, and very happily and in a very satisfied fashion. So again, many years go by. He's out walking in the dark forest. He gets lost. Same thing. He's dying of thirst. He's dying of hunger, and he comes to like a dark fortress. And this is all in the Kangyur. So this is something which is part of the scripture and part of the Buddhist teaching. So anyway, there's this. It's like a fort. It's like this huge dark fort with a moat and big gates. And he walks up to it. And the gates creak open like the movies. The big iron gates creaking open. I won't do the sound effects. And so he goes through the gates. There's nobody there, and the gate closes behind him, just like a movie. And so it's all very, it's dark and it's evil looking and sort of a foreboding place. And he's looking around and he looks up at one of the parapets and he sees a door open and a man walk out. And on top of this man's head is a disc, which is on his head spinning around. It's a disc of double-sided knives, double-edged knives, which sharp on both sides, sharp like razor blades on both sides. So this disc is on the top of his head, spinning around, slicing his head and cutting his head, but he's not dying. It's just this sort of ongoing thing. It's like it's twirling like a helicopter, I guess you'd say, just like in a circle, right? So he's like, "What?" The guy starts coming down the steps, and so our hero who went into the fortress, he's like, "What is going on? What is that? What is happening to you?" And the guy says, "Oh, it's a horrible tale. You don't want to know. You really don't want to know what this is." and he says, "No, I have to know. Tell me. How did it come to happen that this thing is on top of your head, slicing it up, and and just staying there?" He says, "It's a horrible story. I lived by the sea when I was a young man, and my father went to sea and died, and then my friends came and tried to talk me into going on an ocean voyage with them, and my mother didn't want me to go, and I respected her wishes and stayed home. And then I listened to her, and then I asked her a second time, and she said no, and I listened to her, but not as respectfully. And then the third time that happened, where I asked her to go to sea, and she said no, and I didn't respect her, and in fact, I hit her on the head as I was trying to force my way out the door. And he said, because I listened to her respectfully the first time, I met those damsels who lived many, many years in bliss. And because I listened to her the second time, albeit less happily, I met this second set of damsels where I lived for many, many years in luxury. And then the third time, when I didn't listen to her and I didn't respect her, and I banged her on the head, I found myself shipwrecked on this island and had all of these series of events happen to me, and I found this castle, this fortress, and I walked in and the door closed behind me, and there was another man here who had this on his head. And as he told me this exact same that he had done, the wheel of knives lifted from his head and came over to my head and descended onto my head, and then he left. He was done. And so this guy starts like freaking out, right? He's like, because he knows what's going to happen. He knows what's next. And so he kind of goes through a transformation. He has this thing that overcomes his heart where he says, okay, clearly this is in store for me. Clearly this is going to happen. This is why I'm here. And so okay, I'll take the suffering from the guy. Let this spinning disc come to my head and slice my head up so that he's free from the suffering and he can be released and he can go. So in that moment, he got a feeling. He had a feeling of bodhicitta. He had a feeling of compassion for the other guy, and so he closed his eyes and he got ready for the spinning wheel of knives was sort of lifting up to come onto his head. He closed his eyes and kind of got ready for it, but then nothing happened. And he was waiting for this thing to descend on his head, and then nothing happened. And then he opened his eyes and he looked around, and then the dark castle was gone. It just wasn't even there. And in its place was this beautiful castle. So that's the story of the Wheel of Knives, and that's a very famous story in Scripture to teach about karmic consequences. There's also another beautiful description of the Wheel of Knives in one of the secret texts called Yamataka, sometimes called Frightener. And one of the deities has a wheel of knives in his hand, and it's described slightly differently. It's more like a ninja star where there's a center hole which you can hold, like a rim with a center hole which you can hold, and then around the outer edge there's no rim. It's just blades, a wheel of blades which you can throw at an enemy and chop an enemy with, something like that. So it's kind of like a boomerang. You throw it and it circles around and it comes around. So that's the idea of it. So that's the original text which was taught as the Wheel of Knives. And then we're doing a commentary by an Indian author named Dharma Rakshita. And not much is known about him. He was the master of Abhidharma. He was one of the masters. He was Indian, and so he was a teacher to a great Indian master named Jojay. Do you know who Jojay is?
Tisha?
Yeah, Lord Atisha. So he was one of Lord Atisha's teacher. Lord Atisha is a great Lama in our lineage who first brought Buddhism out of India and into Tibet. And the first batch of people that he taught were called Kadamkas. They were sort of like the first wild practitioners of Buddhism. So, they were sort of the first Galupas of Tibet. His dates are 982 to 1052 for Lord Atisha. So that's the feeling. So the idea of the Wheel of Knives, the idea with the Wheel of Knives is to get the feeling that's involved there. Okay, the mood of some kind of razor tip boomerang that someone throws and kind of flies through the air and then slices someone up. Okay, so and the idea is you throw it, and it cuts and it comes back and it cuts, right? So the parallel here is with our activities and with our behaviors, karmically that is. We are tossing boomerangs all day long in the form of our behavior. Karmically, we are engaging in actions, body, speech, and mind, where we're putting things out, and the things that we put out then come back to us, right? Karmically, whatever you put out karmically comes back to you. It's one of the fundamental laws of karma, right? So they're using the same idea with the Wheel of Knives. It's this razor blade ninja star that you throw and it flies through the air and comes back. Okay, so karmically, what we're doing is we're at work or whatever, and it's like something hits us in the back of the head, right? It's like something comes out of the blue and like whacks us in the head, and then we get annoyed and upset and look around and it's like, what the hell was that? Why did you do that? And it's often doesn't seem to make sense. Like, why did that happen? Why did you do that? And it's just something comes out of nowhere and annoys us and upsets us for no apparent reason, right? So the idea here is that we're the ones throwing these karmas out there, which come and circle back around and hit us in the back of the head, and we don't remember what we did or why it happened. So there's lousy stuff happening all day long to us, by and large. We have unpleasant circumstances at work, or you get rained on, or the subway, or any getting sick, any countless numbers of things, right? And all these things are coming back to us from karmas of the past, from our deeds of the past. We're getting old, relationships are falling apart, we have hopes and dreams that aren't realized. Every single one of those things which doesn't turn out well for us or falls apart is kind of a karmic boomerang coming back at us. We wonder, why did that relationship fall apart, or why didn't I get the raise, or why didn't I make the money? Why am I sick? And so what he's saying is that every single one of the problems that we have in our life is something that we caused that's coming back at us like a boomerang. Whenever we have a problem, we look around at outer objects and outer circumstances, and we say, what caused that? Who caused that? Why did it happen? Right? And the point is we set all of these events in motion, and we're the ones who are responsible for initiating the karmic causes, which come back to us as a result later. So all of the things which we get angry about, all the things which come back and bite us in the butt, are all things that we've initiated. So that's why samsara is drawn in a circle. That's why it's called a korlo, a wheel or a circle, right? It's considered a vicious cycle, a vicious circle. So we do something, we initiate a karma, and it comes back and brings a result. So the reason it's a vicious circle is because we're constantly blaming someone else for our problems. You know, whenever something bad happens to us, the natural human reaction is to say, someone else's fault. You know, someone else did it, someone else caused it, someone else initiated this series of events, which I'm experiencing right now. Someone else is making me suffer, and then we blame that person, right? So, I'm in a relationship and I'm annoyed with the other person, and it's their fault, right? They did something or they did not do something, and so I'm annoyed and I'm upset, and then I get angry at them, or I have harsh words with them, or whatever the case might be, right? And so that's throwing a boomerang. That's throwing the karmic boomerang. Every time I get angry or have an affliction, I'm throwing karmas out there which are going to come back and hit me, right? So, and that's how we live. Unfortunately, it's a self-perpetuating cycle. You know, the exact reaction that we have instinctively is the thing that causes future suffering. You know, it's for some strange reason we're hardwired so that when someone annoys us or irritates us, and you see the language I'm using even, when someone annoys me, when someone irritates me, right? It's even built into our language, right? So, say it more properly, when I get annoyed, when I get irritated, right? Because of something that's going on around me, or because of someone who's doing something, then the natural reaction is to not behave very well, right? That's the natural human reaction is to behave badly. You know, it's like someone behaves badly to me, I behave badly back to them. Someone yells at me, I yell at them. Someone tries to, shove me, I try to shove them. Whatever it might be, right? So someone has words for me on the subway, I have words for them, right? So the natural human reaction is the thing which creates the next cycle of suffering. You know? And so every single time that we're triggered, every single time that somebody does something which triggers an ordinary human reaction, responding in kind, right? Then I perpetuate my suffering. I perpetuate this vicious circle of suffering. And so you can say that our actions are backfiring on us. It's almost like throwing a razor tip boomerang. The thing comes back to you and you have to catch, right? And so that's the idea here with this wheel of knives. Imagine if you threw boomerangs and they were razor tipped and you had to, and they came back to you every time. And so this is the device that they're using here. Okay, so every single thing in our lives, every single unpleasant activity in our lives, whether we're depressed or unhappy, or we have low self-esteem, or we're lonely, stress, anxiety, physical suffering, mental suffering, every single one of those things were set in motion by me or you. Period. There is no other cause. There is no other source of suffering. There is no other place that these things come from. It's the only option. So the people outside of us, the boss, the partner, they are the instrument of our karma, right? They are the wheel of knives, you could say. The thing that comes back and acts upon us. But we're constantly blaming the wrong person. We have someone outside of us that's the instrument of our karmic ripening. They are bringing the result to us that karma demands. That our karma is forcing upon us, right? And so the delivery mechanism arrives, and what do? We shoot the messenger, right? We say, don't shoot the messenger, right? Don't kill the messenger. This is what we constantly do. Is every single unpleasant thing that happens to us in our life, externally or internally, Mr. Karma coming, Mrs. Karma coming to call, And so don't blame anyone other than myself, for setting that into motion, right? So I set it in motion and then I'm blaming other people, and it's a complete wrong focus. So every time I get irritated with another person, every time I get annoyed there's no parking space, every time I feel depressed or anxious, then I'm setting another karmic boomerang into motion, right? And then it's inevitable it'll come back to me, and unfortunately it's a sharp it's like a sharp ninja star that's going to come back and stab me, right? So the text has a few metaphors to kind of give examples of things like this. Some of them are a little old-fashioned. I mean, they say, imagine if you were a swordsmith and you were making a sword, and while you were making the sword you accidentally tripped and fell and impaled yourself on the sword and died. It's the same idea, Or if you were an archer and you had an arrow and holding your arrow and you fell and you pierced by your arrow and you died. And the idea is that that this is what we're doing all day long. That we have things which hurt other people. We have instruments that we use to hurt other people, like a sword or an arrow. We have things which are a source of suffering. We are a source of suffering, and we would use that to strike someone else or lash out at someone else. But little do we know that the sword that we fashion to strike someone else is the same thing that's going to bring the blow to us. So that's really what they're trying to get at. We're prepared to hurt other people, but it hurts us instead. We lash out to hurt other people, but in the end we're only hurting ourselves. So, there's another kind of silly story, but anyway, there are a lot of different metaphors you can use. It's like digging your own grave, or I know, Bruce, you're looking at me. I knew it was coming. Go ahead.
Yeah. I held out as long as I could.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
Like a wheel of sharp weapons swept up on the line. So we have this what is delivered as pretty much parable of the sailor and the mother and the good intentions and no, don't go to sea. And we have always in the background the notion that there is an imminent and obvious choice for virtue available.
Yeah.
That more or less the miscreant, the karmic sufferer, ignores or observes, and so we have beautiful maidens and not so beautiful maidens, and we have this kind of,
you got bliss, or we got luxury, or we got
right. So the parable has sort of a spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay, and a price point for every karmic appetite. Okay, but you look at this and you try to decant it from being a parallel and say, now I want to live my life, thus and such or not. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it doesn't become so easy. Just because somebody declares themselves in favor of virtue doesn't mean their choices succeed in arriving at virtue.
Yeah, of course.
I believe that space travel is a good and beneficial thing for humanity, but I can't own a spaceship. So the little old lady, the mother who said don't go to sea, well, where in the teachings does it say that being a sailor is improper livelihood? Mm-hmm. Where in the teachings does it say that an adult child must observe the wishes of a parent, or that the wishes of a parent are always to be considered benign when the world is full of malign parents? Okay, and on and on and on and on. So when you say, well, all right, I give up. Okay, I'm going to stop being Bruce from now on. I'm going to live just the way this wants me to live. There's no way to really put that into practice, because where was virtue in all of this anyway? Okay, it isn't easy to see. In fact, it's really no easier to see after hearing the parable than it was before hearing the parable.
So I hear you saying that basically it doesn't really resonate with you that him not listening to his mother and banging her in the head is
But he didn't bang her in the head. But he didn't bang her in the head, because see, this is what I mean. He tried to get through the door, and she was the one that actually applied physical restraint to prevent him from performing an action that, as far as I can see, by virtue of the teachings, he was entitled to perform.
Oh, I hear
so
you.
Why doesn't the mother get the crown?
She is the crown.
So I hear you saying,
because she's a mother, and she meant well.
I hear that you have mother issues. No. No, I hear
that 50 cents are going to get you on the Dharma bus, okay? Because they're just people, and sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. And
so I hear you saying that you don't agree with the sort of the karmic consequence described in the wheel of
No, I agree that there is a cause, there is an effect, and a mechanism that mediates the two. I'm saying that in terms of the usefulness of the teaching. Okay, it is when you just drill down one thought deep, it's useless because there's nothing in the parable that tells you where virtue really was all along. It's simply an axiom. It's asserted, but it isn't demonstrated. I can think of 100 other courses of conduct that you could defend or criticize using the same grounds.
Well, that's why we have to go into the details. That was just the story overview. Now we have to actually dig into the
Get serious.
meaty nitty-gritty of it. He's like, on with it then! What are you waiting for?
Off with
Thank you,
their
Bruce.
heads. Off with their heads.
Yeah.
If I could respond to that, I was having a similar feeling in trying to apply it to my life, in that it seems like almost every action can be both virtuous and possibly not virtuous at the same time. But also, like, to answer your question, I think that the way that I'm kind of thinking about it is it depends on what the most virtuous decision is in your own mind. So if in his mind he was truly convinced that being a sailor was the most virtuous thing that he could have done, then possibly disobeying his mother would not have brought about the negative karma. And same with the opposite. So like if he was supposed to, I don't think it's saying you must obey your parents and not hurt them by accident. I think that it's depending on what your conception of virtue is. And also, just one more thing, I think the mother also got her own spinning disc thing because the boy ultimately left. So.
But he recognized himself in the other guy's spinning disc. So if it weren't his karma, then he wouldn't have recognized his own story when the first guy told it.
So if the crown staying nice fits where
Okay, let's move on.
Please teach.
I'm going to starting with the commentary. So in the opening verses, he makes his prostration to the three jewels. So in the beginning of the text, as we've said, when you prostrate at the beginning of the text, you're setting the tone for the book. So he actually does an unusual thing. So he prostrates to the three jewels, and then he prostrates to the Lord of Death. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit more. So this picture here, this is this sort of horrible fang monstrous demon that he prostrates to, as well in terms of composing the text. So we'll see when we talk about the LOJONG later why he does that. So first he's bowing to the sweet, lovely three jewels, and then to the horrible destroyer. So we'll come back to it. So I'll read you the first verse. Peacocks wander in the midst of a forest of poison trees. The garden of healing herbs and plants may be something lovely, but peacocks have no love for them. They live off poison itself. Bodhisattva warriors are just the same. Oh, so one thing to say about peacocks, the idea of peacocks was that they eat poisonous mushrooms and other things which people can't eat, and it was believed that contributed to their plumage and their beautiful coloration of their feathers, tail feathers. So that they actually crave those things and live off those things. So the verse goes on to say, Bodhisattva warriors are just the same. A garden of comfort and pleasures may be something lovely, but the warriors have no attachment for them. They live off a forest of pain. So the idea here is that bodhisattvas should be like peacocks. They should seek out people who are suffering in difficult situations and unpleasant situations. And given a choice, if you're a real bodhisattva, given a choice between, say, a latte and an almond croissant, what's your favorite corner patisserie, or going to work in a hospice and help people who are dying of some terrible disease, that you would much more enjoy the latter than the former. That one is actually highly gratified and attracted to helping people, and that's more fun for them, and they get into those difficult situations. And then, in fact, the bodhisattva is engaging with progressively more and more difficult situations, and progressively increasing their capacity. It's very. I experienced in my life, and you may in your life, that I think I'm pretty good dealing with my afflictions. I think I'm pretty together, and then some serious crap happens, which is way beyond my capacity. And I'm like, oh Christ, and so then I have to flail about, and I have to struggle, and I have to try to figure it out. I have to try to deal with it and, be emotionally distraught and, all those things. And then finally, after however long it takes, come to some place of getting it together and being able to handle it, right? And then having some kind of equanimity and reestablishing some kind of feeling of love or compassion or wisdom or whatever it might be, right? So this, the idea here is as a bodhisattva practitioner, constantly kind of delving into this. There's this constant thing of like, oh, well, I didn't used to be able to handle people dying in front of me, but now I can handle it. It's okay, Or, I didn't used to be able to handle the boss yelling at me, but now I can handle it. Wherever you want to start, right? Or, I didn't used to be able to do X, Y, Z, but now I can, right? So this is the idea here. It's one's capacity increases more and more and more the more one is pursuing these kinds of challenges. Why would you want to do that? Bruce might ask. As he has many times.
Well, he might.
Well, he might. So, these lines are often misunderstood and misinterpreted and misquoted. Some people take these lines from the commentary and from the sutra to say, real bodhisattvas don't want to get enlightened. Real bodhisattvas want to stay in suffering and want to continue to be in suffering and be around people who are suffering and be in suffering themselves so that they can help people, right? It's like, I'd rather be standing shoulder to shoulder with someone who's suffering so that I can help them, I want to help them, carry them through the minefield so that they can get out or whatever it might be. But it's not true at all. Bodhisattvas don't think that way. And there's actually a bodhisattva vow that says that we have to get enlightened as quickly as possible and get out of suffering as quickly as possible so that we can teach other people to do it. Right? So there's this wrong idea that's common in some traditions that says, bodhisattvas don't attain nirvana. They kind of get up to the edge of nirvana, and then they turn back because they have compassion and they want to stay in suffering realms and help people in suffering realms. And if I attain personal nirvana, I can't help anybody. Like when I'm in personal nirvana, I'm just blissed out all the time. It's just me and my bliss and nobody else around, and thank you very much, right? So in some traditions, there's this idea of, well, you can't be, you can't go into nirvana if you're a bodhisattva. You turn back from nirvana at the last minute because you really want to help everybody else. So wrong idea, okay? The best thing that you can do for everyone else is to reach total, perfect, magnificent bliss as quickly as possible, right? Which is our goal. It's the goal of Buddhist practice. So to reach paradise, enlightenment, perfect bliss yourself, ASAP is our goal. So why? Then you can emanate thousands of bodies. You can emanate countless bodies to help countless beings in countless realms, right? So it doesn't make any sense to say, well, I just want to stay a sort of somewhat ordinary human being, or I just want to stay a human being to help people. You would do much better to become enlightened. So that's the idea. And then the text is saying, they embrace bodhisattvas, real bodhisattvas embrace difficult situations. And they see it as an opportunity for practice. Essentially all the disasters that life throws at us, that we turn around into an opportunity for becoming a more spiritual person. So, it's hard, right? How many of us go through the day thinking, oh, here's a lousy thing, and let me just practice now? Not typical, right? It's not the typical reaction to say, yeah, I'm having a really bad day, how great is this, and now I can really practice. Mm-hmm. It's probably not your normal reaction, right?
Attraction to the poison. I think the example was serving the sick, but you also talk about the own tricky situations we get in, the painful situations we get in, like with our relationships or a job, or so can the poison be both? When we're serving the sick, and when we're transforming our own pain into.
So are you asking, do you need external suffering to really practice, and can you just practice with internal suffering? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think we go seeking for internal suffering.
No.
What?
I don't think we go seeking for internal suffering like you would seek for.
But this is the point. It's important not to misunderstand. It's not that bodhisattvas seek out problems. You see, It's not that the bodhisattva is like, oh, let me just put myself in the middle of a war zone and see how I do, just to see how I do, because maybe it'll make me stronger. So the goal is not to go find problems. The goal is not to go find suffering. It's not like I'm a bodhisattva, so I have to just suffer all the time. Not like that. See, the point is that negative karma ripens naturally, internally or externally, right? And when it does ripen, what do you do with it? And the natural reaction when negative karma ripens is to what? Yeah, throw that boomerang, right? Is to lash out, blame somebody else, hurt somebody else, right? I mean, if somebody yells at me, that's a negative karma ripening. If somebody yells at me and I feel really angry and upset, that's a negative karma ripening. And then, I'll yell back, or I'll say something nasty back to them, or I'll think something unpleasant about them, right? And then that's a collection of more negative karma, and what perpetuates this samsaric cycle, right? So what they're saying here is you don't have to seek out suffering. Bodhisattvas don't go seeking out suffering just for kicks, It'll come, don't worry. If you're a human being, it'll ripen naturally. And when it does ripen naturally, then it's your practice. It is the basis of your practice. And don't be some whiny whine. It's just like, oh, life is so hard, life is so bad, things are so terrible. If you're a bodhisattva, it has to be a basis of, okay, how can I improve myself? How can I learn from this? How can I practice the 6 perfections? How can I engage in virtue? How can I use this suffering as a path to enlightenment, right? And so we have to talk about that. Within a few minutes. I mean, look, normally when something lousy happens, you lose your job, you don't have enough money to pay the bills, your partner leaves you, or tells you that they whatever. It usually takes a long time to sort of find one's center again. But from a bodhisattva perspective, within 5 minutes you're back to using it as a basis of practice, right? Within 5 minutes you're back in the zone, if you will, where where it becomes some kind of precious spiritual practice, and where you've turned it around. Like, samsara keeps heaping the crap on, right? And then LOJONG is saying, turn it around. Every time some kind of
mishap.
Yeah, thank you. Happens. Turn it around and use it as a basis of practice, and use it to make yourself a better person, and use it to serve other people, right? Like I was sitting in work today. Actually, I have to be careful because I don't know who's listening.
No one at the moment. There's nobody on the other side of the internet. Yeah.
Never mind. I'm just not. So I mean, whether it's external, I've got mental afflictions. I'm sitting there and I'm feeling like this is crazy. What the hell are they talking about? This is nuts. Are they this, that, and the other? It's just afflictive thought, and afflictive emotion, right? It's not serving me. It's not serving the other person, and it's collecting the wrong karma. It doesn't matter if I'm jealous or if I'm angry or if I'm critical, right? Like being critical of another person is just as much of negative karma as anything else, right?
Is it possible that they are actually wrong and you were actually right?
Of course. But we're not talking about wrong and right, we're talking about afflictions.
I understand that, but your judgment could be that you were correct.
That they're crazy?
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be an affliction. Like,
But
even
his
if the
labeling it as
person...
an affliction, you could actually be discerning the situation correctly, but you're predominantly labeling it in a way that may not be right.
Yes,
but
what's the
correct.
emotional content, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the emotional component of it? Is the emotional component like, right?
Like you have to have the ego strength to be able to say, and the judgment and the wisdom to be able to say that
Right.
this person is bona fide crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, in a loving way.
Right. But it's still be able to stick to your guns. It's not as though you're discerning that this person's crazy. It's negative by fact. By definition.
No. I mean, look, you could just be like the sweetest messenger with the message. You just be like, "Hi, dear, I think you're crazy." But it's okay. As opposed to sitting there fuming, like, what, I mean, it's very different things.
But yeah, in a work situation, for example, I mean, time would go by where you could see that decision that they were espousing was incorrect. And
Sure.
Crazy.
Yeah. But again, we're not talking about the objective facts, if you will, because
But at
there
the
is no
time
such
when the future is unknown, the objective facts are up for discussion.
Yeah. But we're talking about the mind, the afflicted mind. So we have to bring it back to that. So,
But yeah, just pointing out there is the aspect of ego strength to discern with wisdom that that person is possibly.
yeah, listen, by all means, just because you tell somebody that they're wrong doesn't mean they're getting negative karma.
Right.
I mean, that's, I think, your point, right?
Right.
So, yeah, but very, very true. I mean, just because you say you made a mistake, or, you know, I have to fire you, or,
Right.
you know, or you're completely in the wrong, or,
Right. For example, I'm sitting here in class, you're describing a situation at work where you think the other person is incorrect.
yeah.
And yet you're punishing yourself, but I have a view of your decision-making process in the past as being more correct than this supposed person.
Mhm, sure.
So to see yourself beat yourself up in respect to the potential of an unknown future, which is yet to play itself out, to me doesn't make sense.
No, but if you speak of it in just much more simple terms, like, you know, this person sitting there and saying, you know, X, Y, Z, and you get really angry, you know, listening to them, that's really what we're talking about.
Right, for sure. No,
So-
Like they could be completely crazy, but you don't have to feel rejection for them and pushing them down and wishing they didn't exist and all this other stuff.
Of course not.
And then your actions would be kinder, would be how to help this person.
But the decision-making process in the field of play at work is sometimes relevant to the correct decision, not necessarily one that's kind.
Yeah, and you know, we're not talking about you have to be a cream puff all the time. You know, that's really not what that's not what it's about. It's not like you have to just be, oh, hi, isn't that sweet, and peaches and cream all the time, right? That's really not what we're saying. That's not what we're talking about.
Right, I understand. Now I'm just responding to that.
Yeah.
But isn't the most important decision is about your decisions that will elicit different types of karma? So even if, like, I'm saying 2 + 2 is 5, you know, and you get angry at me, that's bad karma for you. Even if you're telling me I'm wrong and that's what's making you, even if it's righteous anger, or even if I, like, killed your dog or something, that's a better example with anger. So it's the idea of, like, of cultivating the correct karmas, not the correct objective facts necessarily.
Sure. Yeah, it's about collecting the correct karma. It's like, listen, my kids, you know, they got to do their homework every day after school, and I'm like, it's the 5th time I told you to do your homework. You know, it's like, you know, they're sitting at the table, and you know, I'm like, do your homework. You know, and then, you know, after about 20 minutes, it's like, do your homework. Start to get pissed off. You know, it's like it's an affliction. You know, I want to be sweet and I want to be kind. But I'm really annoyed that they're not doing their homework, and I have to tell them 18 times to do their homework, and I feel like I want to smack them, you know?
But essentially, you're right.
And I'm afflicted.
Yeah.
The point is, it's not about being right, it's about being afflicted or not, you see? I mean, so, you know, we're not focusing on the right or the wrong, we're focusing on the affliction or not. So.
But you can't be afflicted and right.
Sure. You can be, well, yeah, you can be afflicted and right, and you can be
And still
unafflicted.
it's wrong. Yeah.
Karmically, being afflicted and right is wrong. Okay. Yeah, that's good.
What about, so this is kind of a deviation from what we've been talking about, my question, I mean, but what about the utilization of anger as a tool? So maybe you're not attached to the anger, but, and I'm not saying I'm skillful enough to do this yet, so I'm not trying to, like, get an excuse from you, but what I'm saying is.
Can I have a hall pass?
What I'm really interested in is how one would utilize, like, the display of anger or the display of certain emotions while not being attached to them in order to, like, teach someone something.
Yeah. So, I mean, if one gets angry or any other affliction, whether it's jealousy or anything, right? So at the highest level, you know, in the Sogrim teachings, you know, what happens when you have an affliction? It literally kills you. Every time we have a negative affliction, it causes our subtle energies to be choked off and to be restricted, and that's what causes the aging process and death. So, you know, what happens to my body, what happens to my mind when I get angry or jealous or anything else? I mean, it actually suffers. It actually is harmed. I mean, my afflictions harm me, physiologically, mentally, and everything else. It accelerates the aging process. It accelerates the aging process and causes it to increase and accelerate. So, you have to use anger as an opportunity to understand our own nature and get out of it as quickly as possible. So, You know, what is the fourth opening lines of the fourth chapter of the Abhidharma Kosha, right? Leda Jikta Natsogi, right? All of the worlds come from karma. Yeah. What is karma? All of the worlds come from karma, and karma is the movement of the mind. Right? Any movement of the mind, any fluctuation of the mind is karma. Right? So every thought is karma, right? So if we get angry and we're like, yeah, I'm pissed and this is righteous and I'll let it ride for a while, you know, for another minute or 2 or 5 or 10, you know, then we are consciously, intentionally, knowingly harming ourselves, you know, for that period of time. You know, it's like we're purposely collecting intense bad karma. You know, it's like, okay, you know, I think there's nothing wrong with negative karma. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter if we never yell at anybody. It doesn't matter if we never hit anybody. Having the thought of anger is intense bad karma, right? And so it would be kind of crazy, it would be almost insane for a bodhisattva to try to utilize anger in some way, right? So the idea is to use the Dharma practice to immediately address anger and immediately redirect anger, right? So if you think about what anger or any affliction is, this is a bit of a digression. And it's not part of the scripture, so I just have to make my comments clear. You think about any emotion, right? It's if you're meditating, you can, if you're really paying attention, if you're meditating, you know, you can feel the emotion arise. You can slow it down and you can feel what's going on. Right? So, and this is part of mind training practice, right? The idea with mind training practice is you can improve your response time. You know, like you get angry and then you like realize a day later that you were angry, maybe you shouldn't have been. You know, and then you train yourself some more, and then you get angry and you realize like 2 hours later you were angry and it was not a good idea. And then you keep training yourself, and then you get angry and you catch yourself just as the words are coming out of your mouth, perhaps. And you keep training yourself, and then you catch yourself on the first word. And then you get angry and you catch yourself at the thought, you know, as the thought is forming. And then you keep training yourself, and you catch yourself at the beginning of the thought, you know. And then you keep training yourself, and you catch yourself at the level of the energetic impulse, right? And then you keep training yourself, and it becomes more and more and more subtle. So when you say, where is anger valid or justified, and how is anger valid or justified? Well, it isn't. But the fact of the matter is, well, let me take a step back. It isn't valid or justified because we can train ourselves to nip it in the bud even before it turns into a thought. Okay? But it requires training, and it requires effort. Because on an underlying level, all concepts are arising from fluctuating mind and fluctuating energies, right? So if we're really training ourselves, what we're doing is saying, you know, I'm aware of my mind, I'm aware of my energies, I'm aware of what's going on, and I feel the seeds start to ripen, I feel the impulse start to come, and I'm going to address it before it even becomes full blown, you know? So that's really where we're headed, you know, and that's where we're going to end up, right? So, and through that process, one can eliminate anger and the seeds of anger because it's a habituation like any other habituation, right? I mean, there are people who, you know, don't much get angry, you know, and it's not just because they're somehow better than us, you know, they don't have the same seeds, they've trained themselves, whatever. Okay? So, what do we do before we've done the training, right? I mean, let's say I'm the schmo who's like realizes a week later that I shouldn't have been angry, right? You know, after I've had it festering all week, right? Well, then what? Do we say, oh, well, it's okay, I was angry for a week, so have you, you know? Or do we resolve to try to improve it? And so this is what we're talking about is what's our intention and what's our aspiration? You know, you say, yeah, I get angry and it's okay, or I get angry and I'm trying not to. And which one is it, you see? Because if the approach is, I get angry and it's okay, that doesn't make ever change, you know? Because if we say, I get angry and I'm working on improving it, then you're doing the right thing. And, you know, you have the right intention and you're collecting the right karma. The act of trying to stop an affliction is very powerful karma in and of itself. Okay? So then, you know, what are skillful methods, what are skillful means to deal with anger during that training process, right? Oh, punch a pillow, you know, or scream into a pillow, or put a picture on the wall and scream at the picture instead of the person. I mean, you know, we come up with all kinds of people come up with all kinds of stuff, right? You know,
What if your teacher's angry with you?
Do you yell back?
I believe that was the question, is can it be used as a tool?
Well, yeah, so to hop over there, I remember many years ago when I took my first, did my first wrathful retreat, and there's this Ganden Geshe, you know, out in California, and we're doing a 10-day retreat, and there's this picture of this big wrathful deity, you know, weapons and fire, you know, and they're all like, oh, this is really cool, we're going to learn to be wrathful, it's going to be a wrathful retreat, you know? So it's like, oh, Geshe-la, you know, how do we practice wrath? You know, how do we practice being wrathful with other people? Because, you know, it's one of the modes of wrath, you know? And he kind of looked at me, and he's like, don't be wrathful with other people, you be wrathful with yourself. Be kind to other people, you be wrathful with you. That's it, you know? Because it's very tempting, it's very seductive, isn't it? I'll just practice being wrathful, and it's okay. Right? It's wrathful spiritual. It's very dangerous, it's very slippery, dangerous ground, so better just not to go there, you know? Anyway, did I answer your question? I'm not sure if I answered your question fully. Because it's a very important question.
You answered some questions I didn't know that I had.
Okay, well that's good. Did I answer the question you did have?
The question that I did have, I think you also clarified, which was, I guess, how do you utilize the facade of anger in order to teach someone something? So it's not actual engagement, or it's not actually engaging in or being attached to the emotion, but utilizing like the pretense or the kind of like actions of to teach.
I mean, look, if you know, again, it's a very slippery slope. You know, how do you look stern and foreboding and scary when you're not really having that go on inside? And if you have kids, you have to do it. Even when you have kids, you know, you're trying to be, you know, the scary parent to get them to behave when you're feeling quite happy. It's still difficult, you know. So it's a very difficult thing to say, well, I'm going to pretend to be angry, or I'm going to pretend to be wrathful, and not actually have it come up. You know, because there's usually a connection, you know. If you're raising your voice, you know, if you're gesticulating, whatever you're doing, there's usually some inner outer connection going on. It's kind of hard to not have that kick in as a result, you know. So very, you know, very delicate, very tricky. But in principle, yes, if one is very tamed in their morality, if one is very skilled, sure, you know, one can use loud voices and decibels and, you know, theatrics and all the rest, you know, to have an effect. And that's probably the best way to describe it. If you're in the theater and you know how to do an angry role, it would probably be just like that. Although you can still feel angry. I don't know how that works. It's like being on stage where there's nothing really going on, but you're putting on a show. You know, you're an actor. How does that work?
Hector's staring at me.
Oh yeah, how does it work when you're on stage and you're being angry? Do you get angry?
No, you feel it.
Yeah, so never mind. So much for that. So even being a professionally trained actor and pretending to be angry on stage, you still feel it inside. You see? Thank you very much. Rest my case. So.
Good performance. Thank you.
Okay, so, you know, in Buddhism, we're sworn to reach total massive ecstasy in the shortest amount of time possible. Okay, it's not a terrible thing. You know, it's not a terrible goal, and it's not a terrible aspiration. There's not, you know, a lot of us grew up in this Christian context where it's like you have to be guilty, you know, if it works out for you too. You know, if you're on a spiritual path, you have to kind of get nailed on a cross or suffer or have a crown of thorns or be guilty if good things are happening or whatever, right? But, you know, something like it doesn't feel right that I'm like happy while I'm helping others, right? And that I actually benefit from helping others and I feel really good helping others, okay? So it's not like that. The idea of the Buddhist path is the more that one is virtuous, the happier one feels and the better the mind, the more blissful the mind becomes. And as one moves towards enlightenment, the mind becomes increasingly happier and more sublime, right? And so that's the goal, and to get blissed out and teach other people to do it. And so, you know, don't be shy about it. Yes, Bruce?
I just wanted to point out that there is a certain resemblance between the disc on the head, the wheel of sharp weapons,
The crown of
and the crown of thorns.
Well, ours is better.
We did it first.
We supercharged that crown of thorns. Okay. No. Yeah. No, I mean that's the whole point is as we become more virtuous, as we become more pure, as we get closer to paradise, the more pleasures we have, the more wonderful, lovely things happen to us. And as our karma becomes cleaner and we're more and more pure, then our reality and our experiences are like that, and wonderful things start to happen to us. So, the idea that a bodhisattva would like go up to the edge of ultimate total ecstasy and then say, nah, no thanks, I want to go back to crappy existence and help people. And it's kind of a crazy idea. So they make the point in the commentary that that's totally wrong. And that's the first homework question. Should you be doing homework? Okay, so the text is divided roughly into two groups. There are about 25 pages in each section of the text. 25 and 25. And so Master Dharma Rakshita in the text, he starts to go into sufferings. He's like, I got a backache, I got a headache. Where in the hell did this come from? Why is this happening to me? And so in the text, he goes through all these different things. Where did it come from? What caused it? Why is it happening? And then he says, it's this razor tip boomerang that's coming back to me. So it's this ninja star that I threw some years ago at somebody else, and that's actually circled around and it's striking me now. So the first half of the text is like that. There's a refrain, says, I have this suffering, and why do I have this suffering? And then he goes, oh, it's because this wheel of knives has turned around and come back at me again. And that line repeats for every single verse for 25 pages. So every time something bad happens in this life, he says, where does it come from? And then he says, oh, this bad thing happened because I did this. And so it's very important. So he's giving karmic correlations through these 25 pages. He's giving karmic correlations, which is very important. And it's very important to distinguish between suffering and the instrument of suffering. I have a backache. Why do I have a backache? It's because the cartilage is worn away, and that's why I have a backache. No, that's not why I have a backache. That's how I have a backache. The difference between the why and the how is critical. What is the instrument of karmic payback, or what is the karmic delivery vehicle? Two discs rubbing together in my back is the karmic delivery vehicle of having pain in my back. Why do I have pain in my back? Why do I have discs rubbing together? Well, it's because I wrenched my back when I was lifting something years ago and the cartilage is degenerated and blah, 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 blah. That's all what's going on. That's all the mechanics of what's going on. But it doesn't explain why I picked something up that day and that way, and why I bent over the way that I did, and why the vertebrae degenerated the way it did. So very important to make the distinction between the why and how. What's the real cause of suffering? And it's essential to get to the why rather than the how. What's the fundamental underlying cause that drove the delivery vehicle? What's the fundamental underlying thing that is forcing delivery upon me? Somebody's yelling at me. What's forcing them to yell at me? What's causing them to yell at me? I'm having pain. What's causing me to have the pain? Okay, why is it happening? So, well, I'm jealous of this person. I wanted to go on a date with them, and they got there first. And I really like this girl, but she met Hector, and she likes Hector, and she won't go out with me, and I'm jealous of Hector, right? So, and that's because availability aside, okay? So, why am I jealous? Well, it's because she likes Hector, not me. Well, why did she show up and meet Hector right before me? Why did all these things happen that I didn't get to the scene first? So important to make the distinction, right? I mean, if I think if I can just get Hector out of the picture, she'll like me, that's ignorance, right? I mean, that's the normal thing, is if I can be more beautiful than Hector or more clever than Hector, impossible. If I could do whatever, that she'll like me about him. And so, that's just basic ignorance. It doesn't understand why she likes Hector. It just understands how she likes Hector. She likes Hector because he's clever and he's witty and he's got a cool beard you know, and all the rest. So as a Buddhist, we have to go for the why. You know, we have to forget about the delivery mechanism, and we have to look behind the delivery mechanism, right? So, if we don't, then we engage in the natural reaction, which will cause us more suffering. If I can just make Hector look better, and myself look cool, she'll like me more than him, right? If I can just look more successful and more fit and more wealthy and more blah, 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 she'll like me, not Hector. Yeah.
Well, this is sort of the same problem as the parable, which is, you know, we can declare for karma and say that there is an apprehendable result, and that the only thing we can see of the apprehendable result is the delivery mechanism. Okay? But the rest of it, we're like virtue, we're having to take on faith, because at no point do we ever get a cause and effect that's laid out like a trail of breadcrumbs from a specific moment in a specific part of life, or this life, where it then shows inescapably that this resulted through a series of nested events, that it had to be back pain and nothing but a back pain at a certain point in the future, and no other consequence would be acceptable that did not violate karma. So at no point does not the delivery mechanism, but the underlying causality, at no point does this reveal itself. And the closest you ever get to it is sort of an apologia, saying that kind of understanding is the province of the Buddha. Okay, that deep karma is visible only to a Buddha, and as for the rest of us, we have to take it on, on the cuff.
Well, I wouldn't quite say it that way. That's how I'd say it.
That was awesome.
Oh, that's but see, he wants to see the trail of breadcrumbs. Don't we all?
Everyone. I'd love to see the trail of breadcrumbs. But from what Buddhism can say is that, and this is course 5, by the process of elimination, you accept this is the only logical conclusion, right? If we can eliminate every other possible cause, right, then the one that remains that hasn't been eliminated by the process of reasoning is last valid reason left standing, and therefore is the one to go with, right? Look, I mean, just to make it simple, if you have, and this is kind of a little over here, but there's 10 people standing there, and one of them definitively, absolutely, 110% shot Bill, and you could say these 9 absolutely 110% didn't do it, and this one, we don't know. There's no evidence one way or the other, right? Based on those logical principles, you have to conclude that that's the answer, right? That's what we're talking about. So it's just that simple, And we've talked about it over and over and over again, which is for something to be a cause, it has to always hold true. No other apparent cause in the outer world always holds true for any of the things that we normally identify. So if you accept logic, and if you accept the validity of reasoning, you don't have any other choice, even though we can't see the breadcrumbs, other than to grudgingly conclude that this is the only thing left, right? And I grudgingly, I wouldn't say grudgingly, but I sort of sadly agree. It would be lovely to see the causes of karma. I think it was Jason Copper who said, wouldn't it be wonderful? I think it was, anyway, I don't remember who it was. Said, wouldn't it be wonderful if when you stepped on a bug, your own ribs started to crack instantly? Everyone would be virtuous all the time, because the causation would be immediate. It would be so obvious, cause and effect. If it were that correlated, that instantaneously correlated and cause and result without a lag, without a time lag, everybody would be virtuous all the time. We'd live in a paradise instantly almost, Who would treat someone else badly when it viscerally, physically, you punch someone else and all of a sudden your jaw hurts? Who would do that,
But I would still want to step on the bug.
That's
Well, I would argue that point. I mean, I would argue that point. I would say
The fact
after
that I felt the pain of the bug wouldn't change my motivation.
it might.
Well, it would make me a better person, it would just make me more
So let me ask you this: if you thought
reluctant
no,
stepper of bug.
no, mental karma is. Because if we're talking about karma having an immediate result, mental karma would have an immediate result too. You think, I want to step on that bug. And all of a sudden someone comes up to you and says, I want to kill you, you asshole! Would you think that, or whatever, I'm just, So the point is that there's immediacy. All karmas on all levels we'd stop.
Well, yeah, but I'd still be driven by self-concern, not by the bugs will be.
Huh?
No, because
Think about
the
it.
separation
Think about
between
it.
you and the bug wouldn't be as much of a gap. Because if like immediately pain caused to the bug happens to you, then the separation between you and the bug
Yeah, but I'm
increases.
concerned with the pain to
No,
me,
no,
not to the
no.
pain to the bug.
No,
But
just think about
if
it.
they're related in a completely cause and effect way,
Yeah.
such that I punch you and at the same second something punches me in the face, why would I keep punching you?
No, but-
The fact that you can persuade me that punishment is inevitable does not make me virtuous.
But look at the other side of the
Just makes
coin.
me cautious.
No, look at the other side of the coin. I mean, we're digressing here, but look at the other side of the coin. We need to move on. But look at the other side of the coin. If every time you did a virtuous karma, you got some like woohoo experience,
That's a better argument.
well, that would be how it
That's what I'm
works.
arguing.
I mean, it's not just negative karma that brings an immediate result. It's positive karma that brings an immediate result. If positive karma brought an immediate result, you'd be like, have a cookie, and you'd be like, ooh, that's good,
I've been giving that bug cookies all day. That's true.
Exactly. That's the point, right? Anyway, we digress. Okay. Gotta get back to it. Where are we? Okay. Okay, so the point of this text, so we're gonna start to get into karmic correlations. And it's a very good point, You can't prove karma, but you can disprove all other causation. And therefore, if you're logical, you have to at least allow that it's possible, or even say that it's the only rational explanation. So that's where we're at. So the idea of studying this text and these karmic correlations is to be able to design your own future karmically. This text is saying, this happens from this, that happens from that. 25 pages of this leads to this leads to that. And so by going through that and seeing the karmic correlations, you go, in fact, it's one of the homeworks. Let's see. It's like, here's a list of things that might happen to you. I feel depressed. People criticize things I do. I have some serious health problems. I feel anxiety. I don't have enough money. I'm not physically attractive enough. Hard to keep my spiritual practice. I get sick. Da-da-da-da. So there are all these different things, which are practical things that happen in life. And then in the text, he's saying, well, that's a result of doing this. That's a result of doing that. So the point is, you should definitely get the reading and go through these things. It's extremely important. And the point is not only can you design your future by saying, I want to be this kind of person, so I have to avoid these behaviors and engage in those behaviors. You can also understand what you did to bring yourself to where you are. You can kind of look at the past you and say, oh, this is the kind of person I was in the past. I have this result and this result and this result, and therefore I did that, that, and that. Oh, that was, it was pretty cool in the past, or I wasn't so cool in the past, right? So, if you feel depressed, you have a clear description of how to get out of depression karmically, ultimately, not by Band-Aid method, right? Then how to deal with all those karmas is very powerful. And I can tell you, I can speak from experience that read this stuff and it's like, oh, that's nice, and then you don't do it, right? And it's just like, oh well, maybe go to the doctor and get some pills, or maybe I'll go see a therapist, or maybe I'll blah 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 blah. But instead, it's like, what's the here? Let's see, it's this. Pick one. Yeah. So if I feel depressed, it says the karmic cause is encouraging other people to do bad deeds in the past. Who would have thought? Right? Okay, that makes sense. You're kind of feeling down. So it's like, okay, I need to really meticulously avoid that. I need to engage in the opposite, right? So, but do we walk around saying, hey, let's do some virtue? Not usually. So it's very powerful, very profound in that way. I think we should take a break because it's getting late, right? Why don't you have and there are treats outside, so go ahead and have a break, and then we'll we'll get into the rest of the stuff, okay?